This is Ed in San Diego, and with us is Mike Hibberd in England. He's the founder and CEO of Global Expat Pay. Going to hear all about that and what's going on in his world and in the world of corporate mobility. It's been impacted by COVID and impacted by remote and all kinds of issues going on right now. Vibrant community, and Mike has his finger on the pulse. Just attended a interesting meeting in England with leaders of the industry discussing the future and what to do. We're going to hear all about that in just a minute. Mike, Steven is an author and a coach. He has produced, was it 20 books? 21?
22.
22. Oh, that's great. All of, and the most current book is Humony, Humony, Humony Leadership.com. And Stephen, tell us quickly what's Humony all about for the audience who doesn't already know.
Well, thanks, Ed. Humany leadership. Humany is a word I created, combining humanity, and harmony. And it talks about how to become a successful people-centric leader in the workplace, to understand more about how to motivate, get employees engaged, and understand employees have responsibilities outside the workplace, not just a life outside work, but they have responsibilities which we need to recognize and honor those responsibilities. And talks about creating harmony in the workplace. So that's what Humany Leadership is all about.
All right, good. Mike, tell us about Global Expat Pay.
Yeah, so thanks, Ed. Thanks for inviting me onto the show. Actually, Global Expat Pay was founded about 5 years ago. Prior to that, I was working as a partner in a Big Four firm focusing on global mobility, pretty much my whole career, actually. And one of the things that always struck me was that most companies struggle with getting good data into their business processes, and that then restricts the amount of insight they have, but also it creates a lot of cost and effort for them. So we're simplifying that through technology and a managed service.
Okay, so tell us about this meeting that you just went to at Gallagher, and what the main thrust and takeaway was. There's several points I read a little bit about. It's about humans being people oriented, right? That's the thing that Steven's talking about too. But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell us about what went on at that meeting.
Yeah, so what we're doing is, and there's a group of companies that are involved in actually creating this, is getting to a point where technology obviously helps to make things better, but it doesn't take away the human element of how you interact with the signees and how you interact with other people in your business. And one of the kind of key time constraints that gets created in most programs is the lack of collaboration between different suppliers. So you have the company in the middle of all this trying to make things happen, and the other companies they're working with, whether it's their immigration or tax or whatever part of the kind of operational process, that it doesn't always work in a very kind of harmonious and collaborative way. So what we've launched is a service that essentially combines all of the services you might need to mobilize your program. So all of the things you might be buying from separate suppliers under one contract and with one service model, which is fully integrated. So it's actually taking quite a leap forward in terms of how you collaborate to solve the whole client problem.
So you think that in the industry, because of the relationships that have been strengthened over the years through repetitive use and integrated, that all of this would have happened earlier?
Yeah, you would think that. I think there are probably a couple of reasons why it hasn't, though. First of all, I think technology's moved along now, and that makes it easier to kind of integrate ecosystems. So you don't have to go through the trials and tribulations of trying to get one single system. You can have multiple systems that talk to each other. The other, probably more important reason is that most of the suppliers benefit greatly when things go wrong. There's a lot of money in things going wrong, and if you prevent things from going wrong in the first place, then that's quite a big revenue stream that gets eliminated. So what we're doing is really, I suppose it's a bit of a mini revolution. I'm always a bit cautious about using those kind of words, but what we're doing is really thinking about what would make mobility great from a company perspective, rather than thinking about the individual components. And obviously, you know, success comes from having multiple customers under that service model. Everyone benefits from that, primarily the customer.
So who's driving this? Is it the corporate client, or is it an awakening by you and Andrew Elliman and others?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, really. I think we tested the market a little bit before we got this going, because obviously putting something together like this isn't a small undertaking. But what the market's saying is, this sounds too good to be true, and if it's exactly what we've been waiting for, and there's definitely a gap for it. So that's what we keep hearing. And so we got some like-minded companies together which cover all of the areas. So you mentioned relocation, but also our piece, which is managing kind of the payroll and the operational processes, tax and immigration, together with the Gallagher GMS Global Mobility Services team. And they are really spearheading that to make quite a big splash into the global mobility space and do some proper disruption, which I think is definitely overdue.
So you know that I'm producing another meeting with HSBC, hosting it, and Andrew Elliman and AGS is top sponsor. And so I welcome you to think about coming back into that. And we're going to, devote a lot of time to what you just said.
Yep, I know Andrew's a big advocate, and yeah, the event last year at HSBC was definitely fun. So happy
Yeah,
to
that
come
was
along.
my friend Steven was a remote virtual speaker at that event. That was May 9 last year. And then we just did an update on December 7 at HSBC, and they invited me back. So we're going to do it on April 23 live and virtual. And we're also going to do Paris on April 25. So that is still developing. So Steven, it's time to hear from you about humanyleadership.com. And, the slogan that I just love that you used as a throwaway line, but now I'm promoting it heavily for your talk this week at our Washington meeting. You'll be virtual, but I'll be in Washington live. No one wakes up wanting to be managed that day.
Yeah, hopefully it's not too much of a throwaway line, but yeah, that's the heart of Humany leadership, is that changing that mindset that you don't manage people anymore. You manage things, you manage processes, you manage procedures, you manage policies, you manage projects, but you have to lead people. And just that mental mindset makes a huge difference in the results you're going to get. And the interesting thing is, it does drive results. It drives results. It enhances performance of the team. And so this is for leaders. I don't care if you're leading a 3-person team or a 30-person department or 300-person division. This applies to you. And it also helps create a desired culture. And there's so much talk today about culture and organizations, and is it top-down driven, or how do you get employees to buy into your culture? Well, treat treat people as human beings. I mean, that's one of the other throwaway lines is that you don't lead human resources, you don't lead assets, you don't lead headcount, you don't lead engineers, you don't lead lawyers, you lead people and you lead human beings. And again, that's a mindset change that people need to take on.
So is this an act of courage?
It's anytime you change yourself, it's an act of courage. So yeah, there's a bit of courage involved, particularly for those of us who are, let's say, over 45. We've been very successful managing a certain way, doing things, and it worked. I mean, back in the people that we used to admire. I mean, the people I admired when I was a leader and looked up to, the people on the cover of Business Week and Fortune magazine, used to have the attitude of, a great leader gets the most out of their people. Well, that doesn't work today. The way to get the most out of your people, quite honestly, is to put the most into them and train them, develop them, coach them, mentor them. And so again, it's a mindset change, and that's going to take some courage, particularly, like I said, for those of us who, let's say, are on the north side of 45.
Indeed. So, Mike, your background included years with EY. Yeah, and so are you doing what EY is doing now, or are you just in your private enterprise?
Well, I think there are some positives that you pull across. So I think there's the quality mark and the kind of managing client risk and stuff like that. The bits that don't resonate really with a small company, a small dynamic company, are the kind of micromanagement of timesheets and what people are doing every minute of the day. As a leader of our business, you really set the vision and you help people to be the best they can be. But if you micromanage them, they don't really bring their best selves to work. I'm really lucky with our team. I don't really think about what they're doing. I know that they're focused on what we're trying to do in terms of our overall mission, and that's very different, I think, to my previous life, and that's obviously partly down to the scale of EY versus our business. I know everyone quite well in our team, and therefore you can perhaps lead them a little bit differently.
Practicing full disclosure, EY hosted my New York meeting on November 30, and they liked it sufficiently to invite me to come back and do it again. So I'll be doing that in their New York Global Center on May 9 coming up, and I'll give you more information about that. There will be a virtual component to that as well as in person, in case you're interested. But let's talk about the way companies, in other words, the corporate client, is responding to what you guys are doing, Gallagher and Andrew and yourself and Res Forum and the others who are at that meeting in England. How are the corporates responding to this? Were there any corporates in the room?
Yeah. So everything we do is based around kind of corporate input, really. So I think we had about 20 or so corporates in the room.
Good.
Different size programs, different stages of development. What they all had in common is they were looking to make some change, and so the focus of the session really wasn't on kind of selling what we're doing. It was just talking about how you enable change in your organization, how you get the business case agreed to do something that is quite different. Because at the end of the day, if you make a change, you're changing the wheels on a car that still is going at 60 miles an hour. So it has to be done kind of cautiously. And in these days of agile projects, not everything's going to work perfectly straight away. So just being how do you manage your internal stakeholders so they support you to make something which is quite a bold change? And so the reaction was very positive, and I think they appreciated having a different type of conversation. So it was a combination of ideas sharing, and then really just having some table conversations about how would this work for you. So I think there's quite a lot. It's still early stages. There are 4 or 5 customers that are kind of, I would say, at the early bleeding edge of that, including their own program, which Gallagher's own program, which I think is amazing. And yeah, I think it's scalable. We'll get it done, and watch this space, I think.
Yeah, okay. So I look forward to showcasing that as much as possible in our April 23 London event. So, Stephen, your background for our audience here, and for the benefit of Mike, you worked for very large companies. Was it Citibank?
Yes.
And somebody else also in marketing in Asia for a number of years. What's your take on what Mike was just talking about getting competitors and service providers together with the corporate clients and changing everything around? It sounds like a revolution.
It does. It sounds like it's going to have huge benefits. I mean, I became an expatriate in the first time in 1980. So you can imagine there were no mobile phones even then. So barely did we have notebook computers, I think. So the technology, the opportunity here for companies like that to collaborate. And the thing listening to Mike, the word that crossed my mind twice as he talked once about how he leads his company, and then secondly, talking about how putting this consortium of people together to benefit organizations, was the word trust. And that's a big part of that reason it popped in my mind is a big part of it, human leadership. I mean, I coach people now. You can't go into an organization or take over a new team and tell people, here's how you earn my trust. No, I mean, you've hired these people or someone else has hired them. You're taking them over. I coach people walk in there and say, I trust you. I trust you to bring your best. I trust you to do your job. Here's how you can lose my trust. You can lie to me. You can hide something that goes wrong. You can not bring something to me quick enough when it's obviously beyond your capacity and you need my help, my coaching to figure something out. That's how you can lose my trust. And so I think that's a difference between, Mike talked about his organization being a smaller organization and something like an Ernst & Whinney or an Accenture or other large organizations where there tends to be a lack of trust in these larger organizations. And one of the mindset changes I advise people now is that even if you're in a large organization, you personally are running just a piece of it. You're running, like I said, 30 person department, a 3-member team, whatever it is. That's what you can control. That's what you can lead. Lead those people. And don't walk in there and tell them that here's how you earn my trust. It's, I'm the boss and you have to earn my trust. That doesn't work in the year 2023 or now the year 2024. So it's again a mindset change.
So I want to bring up the topic of Latin America and what's going on there now with the new growth. Mike, what do you have to say about what Stephen just mentioned?
No, I completely agree. I think the bigger the organization, the more important it is you break it down into teams. I mean, they are ultimately you work in small teams every day, whether it's a customer team or a broader kind of service team, and you don't look too far into the organization because you just don't know the people, you just don't really interact with them. So it is smaller pieces of a bigger community, which makes the difference. And yeah, that completely resonates. Even when I was at EY, that was the way it was. You had teams of people that you trusted to get stuff done.
Interesting. So Steve, in Mexico City, where you are, and around Latin America, there's change going on. It's still a male-dominated society, right?
In the most part, that is changing fairly rapidly. And here in Mexico, it's going to change dramatically in June because, the first weekend of July, when we have a presidential election in Mexico, and the 2 top candidates are both women. I think there's a third candidate, but that person's at like 4 or 5% in the polls. So really, it's a two-person race, and it's two women running against each other. So that's going to be a huge change for Mexico. But look, we're seeing it. I mean, interestingly, I just read over the weekend Tesla appointed a country head for Mexico because they're building a huge battery factory in Monterrey, and it's a woman leading it. So we're seeing more and more corporate women leaders in a society that was previously very male dominated and very male focused. And the other thing we're seeing, and this plays into Mike's business, I suspect, is the number of investments in Mexico by foreign companies, particularly out of China, Taiwan, Japan, and the United States and Canada, in the upper half, the northern part of Mexico, is tremendous. It's huge. And the number of expatriates, I mean, Chinese expatriates coming to Mexico, Japanese expatriates coming to Mexico. So it's not just ones traditionally from Europe, other parts of Latin America and the United States. Now we're seeing a huge influx of leaders and managers and workers coming from other parts of the world into Mexico because of the nearshoring opportunities with both the United States and Canada.
So the NAFTA, which is not called NAFTA anymore, I don't know what it's called, but let's just call it NAFTA too.
Yeah.
North American Free Trade Association, bringing together, from a trade point of view, Canada, Mexico, US. This is huge. And it's what that started like 20 years ago, maybe even prior to that, with the auto manufacturing in northern Mexico, not to mention oil. And now, as you mentioned, there's so much diversity of manufacturing going on because Mexico has a skilled labor force,
Very skilled labor.
educated.
Very skilled,
not our way, but their way, and it's but it works.
Yeah, and the other industry that's starting to boom in Mexico is the cinematography, animation, and video game industry. So particularly U.S. companies are subcontracting down to a skilled, educated workforce to create video games, artificial intelligence now, animation. Pixar uses Mexican animators for several of its movies lately. Marvel Comics had, excuse me, some cinematography done in Mexico. So that's booming as well, and it is because of part of it is because of the duty-free nature of the trade agreement between Mexico and Canada and the United States.
So the shipments from Mexico into the U.S. has blossomed recently. You saw the chart I put up. I think you sent me a chart also to echo that showed Mexico has become the #1 distributor, or the imports coming into the U.S. from Mexico exceed the imports from China, which is huge anyways. I mean,
Mexico's now the #1 exporter into the United States. And part of that also is political. As tensions between the White House and Beijing have increased over particularly this administration, but even the previous administration, that's why Chinese companies are investing in Mexico, because they can manufacture here and ship. Like you said, you can ship it without the duty or reduced duties. It's cheaper to ship it from here. The cost of shipping, particularly after COVID, by ships from China across the Pacific Ocean, the ports of LA and Long Beach got crowded. So there are many reasons, many economic factors for reasons Chinese business leaders are making decisions to invest here in Mexico.
And what's the seaport? Is it Ensenada or is it some other place?
There's Port Lorenzo. There's three. Lorenzo Cardenas, I believe it's called. There's several ports now, but also some is just trucked. When I travel sometimes to some of the northern cities in Mexico on the highways, I see these big rigs carrying like 20 brand new automobiles that have been produced in Puebla, which is about 60 miles outside Mexico City. on these big car carriers, either going to the ports. They go to Veracruz as well. Veracruz is on the eastern seaboard, and they go up to Houston or New Orleans from there. So you see these big convoys of these trucks carrying 20 to 25 brand new vehicles. It's crazy.
So what's going on in Acapulco? So Joanne and I were in Acapulco over New Year's about 15 years ago. And since then, there's been, political trouble and gang-related stuff, which is really unfortunate because it's such a beautiful area. And then they had that bad hurricane. So what's going on there?
It's recovering. It's actually recovering quicker than some people expected. I understand from the hotels that have reopened, occupancy was very high during the Christmas, New Year festive season. Yeah, the government is putting a lot of money into rebuilding Acapulco after that devastating hurricane. Yeah, there is unfortunately some of the gang-related activities, particularly with the B&Bs or smaller hotels where they're trying to control that. Yeah, just an unfortunate aspect to it. The city is mostly safe, particularly during the day. I mean, it's like any major city in the world. There are places you wouldn't want to walk into, particularly after dark. But it's still attracting some good tourists, and it's still a lovely place to visit.
Yeah, we were just meaning Joanne and I were just on holiday in Cabo San Lucas, which is at the very tip of Baja. It's about 1,000 miles south of San Diego. It takes around 90 minutes on a flight. So it's really super convenient. But we've also been to Ixtapa and Zihuatanejo and Puerto Vallarta, not to mention Cancun area. I mean, just terrific places. And there's so many Americans and Canadians who are now living in Allende and Guadalajara, which is higher up. Because you think of Mexico as being hot and steamy, but these are 5, 6, 7,000 feet, just like where you are, Mexico City, and so it's not hot at all, and clean air, and safe, apparently. And they have internet, and they have strong internet. Look at this. I know, so it's cool. Yeah, but there's plenty of pockets where that does not exist. Mike, what's your involvement in Latin America?
Well, obviously we have, well, not obviously, but we cover the globe really from a shadow payroll perspective. So we help companies to make sure that they're compliant in all locations. And obviously, if they have businesses in South America, Latin America, we cover that too. So I think it's more operational. I can't confess to being very close to the detail of what's going on politically there, but certainly from an operational mobility perspective, we help out with that. Indirectly, just back to one of the comments you were talking about before about getting more female leaders into the kind of into the mix, wherever it is in the world, but say Latin America from this perspective. Companies are actually starting to kind of really test out through data what how far along they're getting with their own diversity goals, and as you know, the mobility programs are typically a reflection of what's going on more generally. So if you have a goal that says that, for example, 30% of our senior leaders ought to be female by 2030, and you've got 5% in your mobility program going through that leadership development, chances of you actually hitting those goals are quite low. So it just gives you some data points just to see if you need to make interventions and how acute those interventions need to be so that you do get back on track.
Interesting. So, Steve, as we come to a close here, let me ask you this question, and audience, this is not rehearsed, so stand by. So, Steve, what have you learned from your recent experiences being a keynote speaker?
Oh, that's a different direction. I think the one thing I've learned or observed, and I hear it from meeting planners frequently now, is people want content. They want actionable content from keynote speakers. They don't want the big theory, just nothing but theory. They don't want the rah, let's go get them, sort of Tony Robbins type speakers who were very prolific, and people copied that style throughout the 90s and the early 2000s. So I think really what I'm seeing, and particularly the people who are hiring me for keynote speaking, is they want new ideas. They want some thought leadership. They want regurgitation of older ideas. So they want some thought leadership, and they want some practicality to it. So a few tips, how do you do this, or how do you think about this, if nothing else? Not necessarily prescriptive, go do A, B, and C, but go think about A, B, and C and apply it into your business.
Steve, what have you learned about Gen Z and young people in the workplace? This is a leading question, of course. How are you communicating what you're saying to the young people who are untrusting and skeptical of people my age?
Well, the ones I coach is, I guess one of the reasons I have a good interaction with them is that I do coach them, I do mentor them, and the old phrase, it's kind of a pithy phrase, but I have two ears and one mouth, and if I listen twice as much as I talk when I'm coaching, I I actually do a better job, because the whole idea of coaching and mentoring is to help people discover for themselves, come up with the answers, point them in the right direction, keep them on track, keep them on a path, or suggest a path, or maybe two paths for them to consider, and then keep them focused on that. So I think, but let me flip it slightly for your audience here, Ed, for the leaders who are 45 plus or so, for them to communicate with the millennials is to understand what are their really key desires as a generation. Everything, when you do generational stereotypical, but as in general, they want to learn. They want to develop, and they want to develop not just professional skills, but also personal skills. So they want to develop things, learn things that they can use in their own personal lives as well as in the workplace. So that's why they eat up things like emotional intelligence workshops. They eat up things like how to communicate, how to give feedback, how to communicate as a leader, how to delegate, because those skills they can use in the workplace, they can also use it with their family and friends. So that's one thing I've learned about where that generation really we need to focus on.
And Mike, from a UK perspective, would you echo that, or is it something different?
No, I think it overlaps a lot. I think purpose is really important. So, why are you doing something? I think just doing something for, professional enhancement and staying in one place for kind of 20 years is kind of unlikely. So therefore, as a leader, you have to keep your team engaged. Otherwise, they'll go somewhere else where someone else will get them engaged. So I think it's all back around to that human leadership style, and just helping them to be the best they can be. And when you stop doing that, they'll go and find someone else who can pick up the baton and help them to develop further. So it's just a different way of thinking about their career as a portfolio, rather than as here's the company I want to work with forever.
Yeah, most definitely. If I could echo on that, what Mike just said is, because a lot of things you read in the press is about purpose, and they talk about company purpose, and are we for the ecology or the environment? Are we for the homeless? Are we for this? Yes, that is important, but also the purpose is, and this is what a human leader is, being able to explain what I call the clear line of value to people. So, Mike, here's the value you're providing to our team. Here's the value you're providing to our internal customer, or the value that you're providing to our external customer, or here's the value you're providing to our department. That kind of purpose, so people understand what value they're bringing to work, is extremely motivating. It helps engagement, and it helps loyalty, because people do want to know that they're not just doing a job that's redundant and routine, and they clock in and clock out, and they're not motivated. So I echo very much what Mike's talking about there.
Thank you guys for being with me on Global TV Talk Show. I invite you to come back.
Love to.
So tomorrow, Joanne and I fly into Washington, D.C. We're being hosted by a global law firm called Mayer Brown in their K Street digs. And our keynoter is she's a lobbyist with Samsung Electronics America. And as you may know, the Biden administration pushed through the CHIPS Act, a law about semiconductor manufacturing in the U.S., mostly in Arizona, but in other states as well. And so the Taiwan group and the Korean group are investing billions of dollars to make chips, semiconductors, state of the art in the U.S. And this gal, Rebecca Peters is her name, she was on Biden's special committee and she worked with Congress to get that passed recently. So she's going to talk to the audience in the room, but also using Global TV Talk Show as the megaphone on February 1 coming up. So
That's not, you know what? And one of the United States' largest chip manufacturers is called Micron, based in Boise, Idaho. As a result of that CHIP Act, they are investing tons of dollars in upstate New York in a chip factory. So it's not just having impact of having a foreign investment in the United States, so it's also cross country investment within the United States.
Yeah, are they in Mexico also? Micron?
Micron's not in Mexico to my knowledge. I don't think they are. They heavy presence in Singapore with manufacturing facilities, very high tech facilities in Singapore, also Italy and Germany, I believe. And I believe they're also in Texas as well as Idaho.
So upcoming, I'm going to be producing meetings, 2 meetings in New York area, one on March 13. These are in-person plus virtual. And that's going to be right there, right adjacent to Times Square. And then on May 9 with EY, and we already have 4 corporate speakers, just like bang, just right away. They said yes. And of course, they're related to EY, so that's how easy it gets sometimes. And and then we're going to do a meeting in Boston. I'm originally from Boston, so this is going to be a homecoming in early April. And then, as I mentioned, April 23 in London at HSBC, and April 25 in Paris, and May 9, as I mentioned, in New York. In June, it looks like we're going to be back in Europe. There's a company called Air Liquide. Mike, do you know Air Liquide?
Yeah, I know of them for sure.
Yeah, so they're a global oil and gas and whatever, but they have a facility in Malmo, Sweden, and happen to be friendly with a senior HR leader there, and she is going to host us and bring her network from Copenhagen and Malmo. Malmo is right outside Copenhagen. So we're going to do a Scandinavia event. And while on that trip, I'm working to set up, it's not set up yet, a meeting in Geneva and a meeting in Berlin. So it's going to be a really busy 6 months coming up. And stay tuned, because all of that's going to be on Global TV Talk Show.
Very global.
Yeah, I know, really. All right. Thank you, guys. Take care.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.